In this video, I'm going to look at the Nikon Nikkor Z 50mm f1.2s, designed primarily for demanding professionals and discerning enthusiasts. It's one of the fastest autofocus lenses in the Nikkor Z lineup. While Nikon has a legacy of producing ultra-fast f1.2 standard lenses, this is their first f1.2 autofocus lens. Nikon's history with f1.2 lenses began in 1965 with the introduction of the Nikkor-S 50mm f1.2. This was followed by the legendary Noct-Nikkor 58mm f1.2 in 1977 and the AI-Nikkor 50mm f1.2 in 1978, followed by the AI-S version in 1981. However, after 1981, Nikon took a break from producing f1.2 lenses until the advent of the Z-mount system in 2018. With the larger Z-mount, Nikon aimed to overcome the limitations of their previous f1.2 lenses by incorporating new technology. As a result, the Nikkor Z 50mm f1.2s was launched in September 2020. But did Nikon succeed in meeting these high expectations? Let's find out. I tested this lens on a 46-megapixel Nikon Z7 Mark II. Sample images were taken with Nikon ZF. You can also see this review as a written blog post on our blog site. I put a link to the blog post in the description below. Most of the sample images in this review and many more can be found in higher resolution on another site. I put a link to that site in the description below. I'd like to thank one of our readers, Wolfgang, who kindly loaned this lens for a couple of months for test and review purposes. Handling and build quality. Well, the first thing you notice about this lens is its impressive size. When Zeiss Otus 55mm f1.4 came out, I thought it was unpractically large and heavy for being a standard lens. This Nikon lens, with its 1090 gram, is somewhat larger and heavier, although it's smaller and considerably lighter than its cousin Nikkor Z 58mm f0.95, which I think is ridiculously heavy, especially as it is manual focus only. Of course, 17 lens elements packed in this lens must weigh something. At least it's not front heavy, which helps in handling the lens on the camera. The lens barrel is mostly of heavy-duty plastic. A weather-sealing gasket is visible around the metallic mount plate, and Nikon states extensive sealing to keep out dust and moisture, especially around the moving parts of the barrel. The lens has an auto manual focus switch, a control ring which can be set to control aperture, exposure compensation, or ISO sensitivity, or to be switched off totally. The control ring rotates without any click stops, so when set to control the aperture, you can change the aperture clicklessly, practical for video work. There is also a function button, an OLED display, and a huge rubberized focusing ring. The OLED display can be set to either show working aperture value or the focus distance. When it's set to show the distance, it also has an indicator for the depth of field. I tested the reliability of the camera's display distance using my red Posh and the trusty measuring tape. I positioned the camera exactly 1 meter from the car and conducted 10 autofocus tests. The display showed the accurate distance 10 out of 10 times. I repeated the test at 2, 5 and 10 meters with consistent results. At 1, 5 and 10 meters, the camera displayed the correct distance every time. At 2 meters, it showed 2 meters in half the trials and around 195 meters in the other half. Overall, the results suggest that the distance readings are reliable. In front of the focusing ring is another rubberized ring, which is fixed and likely serves as an aid for better grip during detaching the lens. The lens comes with a decently sized plastic lens hood that snaps into place with a click. To detach it, you have to push an unlock hatch on the side of the lens hood, a nifty security feature to not accidentally detach the hood. The lens features internal focusing powered by a stepping motor. The autofocus is accurate, relatively fast, and nearly silent. Overall, it appears to be excellently built. Now to the optical features. First, sharpness near infinity mark. For the infinity sharpness test, we look at 3 areas of the image: center, midframe, and corner. As this lens has quite high vignetting, to be able to assess the sharpness in the corners easier, I have compensated vignetting in the corners for the 4 widest apertures. At the center of the image, the lens performs exceptionally well. It starts with very good sharpness at f1.2, improves to excellent at f1.4, and reaches phenomenal sharpness from f2 to f8, where it remains just excellent. The midframe is slightly softer, but still impressive. It delivers good to very good sharpness at f1.2, becomes definitely very good at f1.4, and achieves excellent sharpness at f2 and f2.8. From f4 to f5.6 it reaches phenomenal sharpness. The corners, which are the weakest area, offer only good sharpness at f1.2. However, they improve to very good at f2 and become excellent from f4 to f5.6. While the corners never reach the phenomenal sharpness of the center or midframe, they do achieve excellent sharpness at their peak. Across all the regions, peak sharpness is attained at f4 to f5.6. Sharpness at portrait distance. Let's look at the point of interest for portraits at portrait distance. The center, the center's inner circle, and the center's outer circle. The center sharpness is excellent and the inner and outer circles are very good at f1.2. The inner and outer circles are a little darker wide open due to the vignetting, but the contrast, while not excellent, is very good. Stopping down to f1.4 improves sharpness and contrast everywhere, and at f2 both sharpness and contrast are excellent everywhere. f2.8 and f4 are as excellent as f2, if not even better. It's simply amazing for portraits at any aperture and any of the tested points. Close-up sharpness. Very good sharpness from 1.2. At f2 the sharpness and contrast are excellent, and it gets just better by further stopping down. f4 seems to be its peak performance, which is super sharp. At f8 it is still excellent, and down to f11 it's very good. f16, while still very good, shows the lens's least sharp aperture. Lens distortion. The lens distortion is very well corrected, but note that in camera correction is always on and you cannot switch it off in Nikon cameras. Vignetting. Ultra bright lenses often show more vignetting than slower lenses. Here, I tested the lens with in-camera corrections off. Lightroom profile correction not activated. At f1.2 the vignetting is quite noticeable, and at f1.4, while improved, still noticeable. At f1.8 it's okay, and it improves by further stopping down. At f2.8 it is hardly noticeable, and at f4 it's negligible. While average performance, it's better than the competition. Focus shift and aberrations. There is a small amount of longitudinal chromatic aberration wide open at f1.2. It improves a lot just by half a stop smaller aperture at f1.4. At f2 it's hardly noticeable, practically gone. At f2.8 and smaller apertures it's completely gone. The lateral chromatic aberration, while existing, is not a concern, although I'd like to mention that I had expected a zero lateral chromatic aberration, or at least near zero, because its smaller sibling, Nikon Z 50mm 1.2 shows even less lateral chromatic aberration, and Sony's 50mm 1.2 also shows less lateral chromatic aberration. Flare resistance. In this section, any lens can be made to look bad, some more easily than others. With Nikon's super integrated coating, our Neo coat and nano crystal coat, this lens should fall into the latter group. However, the number of lens elements, 17 in this case, increases the potential for flare. In most situations, the lens controls flare well, but during stress tests, I was able to produce some. In these images, I showcase the worst cases I encountered, all of which could have been avoided with slight change in angle or position. Unfortunately, in those situations, when the sun is in the frame, the lens hood does not help much. In general, it should be categorized as quite good performance for such a fast lens. But overall, I would say average for being such an expensive lens. This Nikon lens suffers from very mild in the extreme corners wide open at f1.2. Not unusual, as its f1.2 competitors perform similarly here. The is gone from about f1.8 though, which is very good. Nikon has traditionally made lenses with very well aligned aperture blades, which have been able to produce nice sun stars despite odd number of rounded aperture blades. Nikkor Z 50mm 1.2 is not an exception and can produce nice 18-pointed sun stars from f5.6. They will get quite well defined from f8 and smaller apertures. Focus breathing. Nikon states you can change focus without noticeably affecting the shot's angle of view or causing focus breathing. Well, I have to agree with that. The focus breathing is negligible, if any, to videographers' joy. And now to the bokeh. This should be the most important characteristic for a lens like this. Let's have a quick look at the bokeh balls. There is a quite weak tendency to onion rings in the bokeh balls. The optical vignetting is better than average. Now to some real-life situations. First, at short distances. Here the background blur is soft, but not smeary. It's due to very well corrected spherical aberrations, which also helps the subject to stand out, somewhat similar to Sony's FE 50mm 1.2 GM. Mid-distances. Here, even with the background not so far away, the subject stands out well from the background. And even at longer distances, the subject separation is impressive and visually appealing. In conclusion, the bokeh is smooth and pleasing, making it easy to isolate subjects with this lens. This effect is not only due to the shallow depth of field, but also the sharpness and contrast of the in-focus area. Of course, the beauty of bokeh is subjective, so take a look at these images and the sample shots to decide for yourself. Now to the conclusion and sample images. Well, there are a lot of good things to like about this lens. The sharpness, the bokeh, the vignetting, the correction, build quality and handling, distortion, focus breathing, etc. But there are some areas that are not bad, but not very good either for such a lens, and that is the AF speed and the flare resistance. What I don't like is its size and weight. This is a well-built lens, primarily designed for professionals, evident in its size and build quality. While I might hesitate to take it on a casual walk, it truly excels in scenarios like weddings or other indoor social events, especially in confined venues. In such settings, an 85mm lens is often too long with too narrow field of view, and a 50mm f1.8 lacks the same level of subject separation. You are paying a premium for the f1.2 aperture here, which delivers exceptional performance in low light and creates striking background blur. However, if you plan to shoot at smaller apertures, the Nikon Z 50mm f1.8 can perform just as well, if not better, in certain situations. In my opinion, this lens would be perfect if it handled flare better when shooting into the sun and were slightly more compact and lightweight. Otherwise, it's a fantastic lens. As mentioned earlier, this review is also available in written format on our blog, where you'll find detailed test charts on sharpness and other characteristics. I've also listed a few alternatives at the end of the article for those interested. A link to the blog post is included in the description below. Huge thanks for watching. Any comments are most welcome. If you like this video, give it the thumbs up. And for more content like this, please subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Until the next video, have a fantastic time, everyone.